Yay!
Oh, finally, Scott Wolf from Travelers Well and all those fun things that you do. We have this incredible eclipse coming up. And, it's eclipse season, as they say. So what's going on with eclipses?
Well, the first thing, which is really kind of fun, is that this upcoming solar eclipse is going to be during the Olympics and focused over the Koreas, North and South Korea.
Wow.
And this is from the perspective of the geodetic world. So the timing of this eclipse is really so appropriate. And really, eclipses are just so very exciting. These eclipses do, and really there's three steps to an eclipse. Number one, eclipses either energize or create a crisis.
Yes.
Second, they always come in pairs, meaning the eclipse from August 21st, that big one that we all watched, that is the opposite spot in the zodiac from where we are right now with the eclipse on February 15th. So they come in pairs and they energize the same spots in the zodiac, just from the opposite side. And the third thing is that transits are our guides. So actually, when we think about what's the best way to work with an eclipse, if we honor Jupiter's opportunities and we work to pass Saturn's tests, then the eclipses help us and they really push us forward. And so in a sense, when we think about the transits that are going on as Jupiter is making trines and sextiles and conjunctions and squares in our chart, he's saying, hey, here's all the different opportunities that you have. What are those? And pay attention to those and use those, because then when Saturn comes through with the test, Saturn gives us the awareness how we're doing. Are we doing okay? Are we not doing okay? Because then that's going on. We have these things that are happening. And in a sense, we're really meant to pay attention to all these pieces and to ask ourselves a question. Are we on track or are we not on track? Because then these eclipses come and they bring a message which is, whatever should happen is gonna happen. They're the ones that bring the demands and they force it into our world. It's like this great burst of energy. And so, as these eclipses come, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, wherever the eclipse hits your chart, and everybody's chart's different, obviously, but when the eclipse hits your chart, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, everything starts moving forward. And you speed up, almost like you go, oh my God, things are really moving now. And so there's like this sudden change that takes place. And that's the good side of an eclipse, is that we suddenly have this, in a sense, momentum that we didn't have before. One of the things when we go back, we think about what Jupiter does. He gives us all these opportunities, but that doesn't always mean that we see all the rewards every time. Like we get 10, 12 nice Jupiter transits every year. That doesn't mean that we win the lottery 10 to 12 times, but we're setting it up, we're doing the work, we're having fun. And then as getting hit by the eclipse, then the eclipse really sort of adds that impetus that sort of breaks the logjam and everything's moving. But the flip side is, what if you haven't been doing the work? What if Jupiter brought a transit that said, you really have an opportunity to build better relationships? And you just kind of say, oh, I'm feeling good right now, I'm not going to do it. And then the transit comes, the eclipse comes, and it hits your chart and relationships are the topic and you haven't been dealing with it because you had the opportunity, you didn't follow it. So then the eclipse says, hey, what you were supposed to be working on relationships and you didn't do it. So we're going to force a crisis so that you pay attention. Remember, the eclipse always says, I want what should happen to happen. It's one of these little magic pieces of what's going on in the zodiac. So everybody is going to be having these eclipses occur, and it's going to be a mirror, again, because they're happening in pairs. The eclipse in August, on August 21st of 2017, started this. And now this eclipse is going to have the second batch, and it's going to finish it off. So it's like there's this opposite, it's this 1 year. So the eclipse in August energized us roughly from July, a little before the eclipse, through January, February, meaning right now. And the eclipse that's coming up on February 15th will affect us from now all the way through into the summer of 2018. Sometimes, and let me actually back up, because we sit back and we say, so, okay, so stuff is supposed to happen. What are some examples? And actually a really sort of like, this is kind of like a really weird thing, but I asked myself a question this morning. This is going to sound like really crazy. What if I was Donald Trump's astrologer?
Wow.
You know, and by the way, this is, I'm not trying to do politics with this, you know, but we're trying to ask what would be the point of that. And Donald Trump had the eclipse in the summer, in August, hit his Mars and his ascendant, and the eclipse on the 15th of February will oppose his Mars and hit his descendant. So let's just think about that, because it's kind of an interesting thing to watch, because this is how we get to see how astrology really works. Then we get to apply it to ourselves. But so Donald Trump had a new kind of battle that started coming forward to him. The various things, everything from North Korea to Iran, to also this investigation. So the Mars energy, the battle, was sort of brought to him. But now the eclipse is hitting his relationship house. And now the question is, what happens to his relationships? Do they get better suddenly? Or is there a crisis? Now, in relationship terms, we would ask, do relationships get deeper or do they flip? Does an ally suddenly become an adversary? And what's happened? Michael Flynn is now cooperating with the investigation. Steve Bannon has flipped to a certain degree. So if, as an astrologer, I would say, you really don't want to create enemies during this time. You want to figure out how you can build alliances to keep people with you. And of course, he wouldn't listen to my advice, because he's really, so he had that opportunity last week because a Republican and a Democrat came with a compromise. And he said, no way, and he said, no way, with expletives. That's the nasty side of Mars. And that irritated relationships, not only in the Congress and in the Senate, but around the world. So if you kind of, one of the things about politicians is that it's really easy to look at what they're doing and put it into the context of how it really works, because it's so obvious. So the question that's going to happen is, what's going to happen to relationships over the course of the next 6 months for President Trump? And, if you were going to say, if you're not taking the right path, then watch out. And by the way, so we sit back and we ask another question. We say, how do we know if we're on the right path? How do we know what that is? My guru has this line. He says, basically, are you moving in harmony with the sun, moon, and stars? As the planets are moving, are you getting the rewards, or are you getting not the rewards? Are you getting the opposite? And so because there's all these crises, I would say, Mr. Trump, you're not getting the rewards. You need to do something different. You need to build those alliances, or these alliances will fall apart and some will become your enemies. And you don't want to do that. So that's, in a sense, the way that these eclipses are connected to what happens in our real life. And again, with Donald Trump, he's going to have Saturn oppose Mars all 2018. So this is where the transit then mediates how the eclipse gets unfolded. So our job, and by the way, so for each one of us as individuals, we're here to watch that, to see what that's all about, so that we can, in a sense, make the best use of it in our own lives.
I can see that. So now we have this going on. We also have something special. I guess it's the once in a blue moon phrase now, you could say. So we have a blue full moon, and they're calling it a supermoon. What's that all about?
End of this month, January 31st, we have that eclipse slash full moon in Leo and Aquarius. And really what you want to do is take those degrees. So it's 11 degrees of Leo and Aquarius. That's the full moon, the lunar eclipse. And then the solar eclipse is at 27 of Aquarius. So you kind of want to go 5 degrees either side of that. And then you want to ask what's in your chart at those places. And say, when the eclipse hits, let's just take the big one. Let's take the solar eclipse at 27 of Aquarius. You want to say, where is that in my chart? And are there any planets there? Because these planets will become powerfully energized. They'll become on sort of center stage. The eclipse kind of takes the planet that's involved and says, you're on stage, the spotlight's on you. Man, you better deliver at this time. You know, so it really does, in a sense, push that out and onto the agenda. So as an example, personally, the lunar eclipse is on my ascendant and descendant. So in the lunar eclipses, it energized both sides a little bit at the same time. When we think about the big one, though, there's a really interesting thing. This solar eclipse on the 15th, it's at 27 of Aquarius. And one of the really fun things as an evolutionary astrologer is that this this eclipse is going to really bring super opportunities to people born between roughly 1953 and 1957. Because everybody in that group has Pluto in Leo, where the earlier eclipse in August was. But what happens with Pluto is this energy, and it's kind of a fun thing because this is such a great opportunity. Pluto is not only a place where we've had focused, powerful efforts, but also where our wounds are contained, and really primarily unconscious wounds. So stuff that we're really not aware of. And the opposite side of the zodiac is where we heal those wounds. So we would say, as an example, that if you're born from 53 to 57, that there's something about your desire to feel special, to feel wonderful, to be noble, to be good to people, and it doesn't always work. So the eclipse is now saying, pay attention to Aquarius and let go of the need to feel special to everybody and heal and focus on, in a sense, your kindred spirits. This is actually a really big piece, is that this notion of kindred spirits becomes so very important right now. And because one of the things that happens is that so often people say, oh, I want my family to love me, I want everybody to love me from every part of my life, and so on. And we know that sometimes that's just not going to happen. And we don't want to be debilitated because of that. And this eclipse is saying time for healing. Another example. And by the way, does that make sense, Charlie?
Yeah, it does. It does. I get it.
You know, and the other piece is everybody born roughly February 12th to February 19, the eclipse will hit your sun. And everybody born from roughly August 15th to August 25, the eclipse will oppose your sun. And these...
That's me.
There you go. So here you take this and you say that the eclipse, what does the sun want? Sun has 3 rules. God Apollo, right? The sun God Apollo has 3 rules. He says, number 1, know thyself, meaning live your life and nobody else's. It also means become enlightened, but that's beyond my pay grade, right? So live your life and nobody else's. Second, be confident. Grab the reins of the chariot and focus your willpower, because that's how Apollo's horses obey him. And then third, go into the sky and shine. So if we know ourselves and we're confident and focused and we go into the sky and shine, then we're, in a sense, honoring our sun. And this eclipse is going to take everybody born during these two periods and say, hey, are you aware of this? Are you doing it? And if you're doing it, you're going to find that the path, again, it'll get more fun. It'll be more exciting. You'll have more results. You'll say, God, I'm really feeling good. It's like my bicycle's going downhill. Everything is flowing really nicely right now. And it will come rather suddenly. Alternative, if you're not doing it, remember the eclipse says, we want to make sure that what should happen does happen. That's the message of the eclipse. So then if you're not doing that, let's say that you know you're supposed to have something that you're meant to do that is Aquarian, right? So Aquarians have some aspect of them that is unique, special, different in terms of their goals, their aspirations, and also the audience. And what happens if we're hesitant? And we say, God, I'm just not quite ready to do this. Then the eclipse will say, I don't care. I want you to do it. Boom, and they'll push you. And they'll give us more than a nudge to make sure that we are honoring what's supposed to be taking place. Again, but these are the in a sense, these keys. And again, it always comes back to, we want to work with our transits. And then we want to know that these eclipses are, if we're doing a good job, they'll energize us. And if not, there's a crisis, and we have to, in a sense, address that crisis. And I mean, ultimately, one of the things about, I guess, my understanding, my experience, is that when we're following our path, our spiritual path, and most of the people that I get to talk to, and I'm sure almost all of your listeners are people that in one way or another are saying, I'm on this spiritual path, that there's this thing that says, we're here to do something, and we're here to make progress. And one of the really interesting things, again, about these eclipses, sometimes on the spiritual path, we say, God, I'd really like to do this. I really want to take my work, let's say, as a healer or a writer or a teacher or whatever, and I want to do it, but I'm not quite ready to do it yet. Well, the eclipses are the kinds of things that I say, no, time to do it. And again, so where is it hitting your chart? That really becomes the big topic today. And it runs from now through the middle of the summer, through August or so. And so it's almost like what we all want to think about, because the eclipse in last August was the opposite in this pair of this mirror, that the events in your life from roughly July, August of 2017 through August of 2018 are all going to have a similar theme. And the best thing that we can do to make our lives really rewarding and happy is to say, well, what's the messages in my birth chart? Because we always have to follow that. And then what's going on? What are the particular triggers that are asking me to move forward? One of the things, yeah, you were going to say something, Charlie.
No. I find that fascinating. That you would have the opposite. I didn't know that, so I'm learning something new with all this.
So this always happens, and so it's a funny thing. Eclipses are always opposite sides. There's always going to be two that are a couple degrees apart. So, one might be at 28 of Leo, and the next one's at 27 of Aquarius. They can be off by a degree or two, but they're almost always going to have an opposite pair. Sometimes that breaks down. Next summer there are going to be two solar eclipses, the one in July and the one in another one in August. So one of those two won't have a bookend, won't have a pair really, but then the other one will go back to the pairs. And so if you go back in time, there's always two eclipses that are pretty much direct opposites.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this notion of balance. So if you think about opposite sides of the chart, one of the things that is really one of these fundamental principles of astrology is that the opposite side of the zodiac supports each other. So because the current eclipse is in Aquarius, Aquarius says, hey, what's unique about you? What's special about you? What makes you have special aspirations, and who are your kindred spirits? But sometimes we're not confident in what makes us unique. That's where Leo, the opposite side, is Leo. And Leo comes in and says, hey, you're noble. You have something to share. You have a radiance within you. Take that radiance and project that out. Share that. And so Leo helps Aquarius. And of course, you can go back and forth with all the signs that way. It works really nicely. And so that's actually the purpose behind the way these eclipses have these opposite sides. And so it's sort of one of the things that we think about when we're trying to understand astrology, and both in a really big way, but also in a really practical way. Astrology is here for the sun, moon, and stars to help us understand ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to back up and do one more thing. I look at astrology through three questions. What, when, and where? What is your path in life? What's your soul's journey about? What's your karma from the past lives that gets reestablished by family early in this life, that then you will go forward and you now head forward? That's in the birth chart. And there are certain things in the birth chart that say we're really meant to do A, B, C. We have to do those things. So no matter what we do, we really want to honor that journey, and because the astrology symbols are archetypes and mythic archetypes, I call it the mythic journey of the soul. What is that? That's one. The second is when. When do certain kinds of events take place? And so today we're talking about the eclipses, which happen in time. Transits of Jupiter, transits of Saturn. And if we wanted, you can add in all the transits because they all have their meanings. So the second principle is the ongoing movement of the sun, moon, and stars through transits, eclipses, progressions, and so on are helping the unfolding of that journey that we're on. And when we move in harmony with it, then we're not only honoring the moment, the transit, the when, we're also honoring the what. And then the third piece is where. And in this case, where do we live? Meaning that there are energies where we live that sometimes make it easier or not so easy to succeed on the what and the when. So at our best, we're understanding what our journey is, what, when things will happen, like eclipses and transits, and we can do it by connecting with our best locations. That's really when things sort of flow together in a really wonderful way.
Wow, beautiful.
It's always this big package. It's a big cosmic thing, but it's beautiful, and it really allows us to be inspired and to really use that so that we can feel joyful because we're honoring our path, being radiant, and then life is good.
Well, one of the things that I admire about you, Scott, is, years ago, and for people who don't know, people who have not had the experience with you, when they look at astrology, they think of, what you read in the newspaper. I don't know if you read newspapers anymore, what you pick up on astrology.com. And it's so, it's a drop in the bucket as to the wealth and the girth of who they really are. And this is what you offer in the things that you do. You bring it to a real level where it's like, do you remember when this happened in your life? Well, this was going on. And you make it real. You make it in your life. It's not something, some fantasy that you go, well, because I'm a Libra, I am this, this, this. So you bring a reality, as far as I see, to astrology, because there's this, some people still have in their minds this myth of what astrology is. And you, as I said, you take it to the deeper level because you do the astrology, you do the astrocartography, and you do take the time to really study the person before you even do study the person.
If you I will tell you, it's really a great joy. One of the things you made a great note about the astrology that comes in a generic way, like what's in the newspaper, and we're talking about an eclipse today. But one of the things that is really important is that astrology helps us to really, they're like signs. And it says, if something happened at this time, really pay attention to that. And what I really enjoy is getting to help people by going through their lives and through transits and say, if this is your journey, and these are the times, and these are the places, it really becomes quite magical, and especially when we bring in the location piece, because yesterday I was chatting with somebody and we were doing their locations, and places that you wouldn't think are on their agenda, would be on people's agenda, are on their agenda. So if you said, your places are at Atlanta, Morocco, Istanbul, and in New Zealand, and you go, whoa, what's that up with? But then they go, oh my God, these are the places I'm traveling to.
Wow, yeah.
And when you see that happening, there's this great sort of connection to all of these pieces, so it really becomes quite fabulous, quite fun.
Yeah. Just chart properly before you do a session with them. And thank you for that. Thank you for your integrity in the work that you do.
Oh, that is so.
Thank you, Scott, for being on and sharing your knowledge and helping people understand it better. Because my thing is, the three wise men, since we just had three kings, they had to follow something. How did they know to look up and follow the stars?
That's right. It's there. It's fun. And thanks. And thanks for letting me be a part of this. And thanks to all of you for listening. And I hope we can do it again.